Moving along, I watched an interesting podcast. Coleman Hughes had this guy, super interesting dude. He was one of the first, or maybe the most popular American jihadis. He joined Al-Qaeda. He was born in rural Pennsylvania, and he traces his reasoning back to what I think is very likely the case for almost anybody who finds themselves in these sorts of movements. Was he was abused in his childhood. His dad kind of left him. His mom, he said, abused him pretty bad. He ran away at age 15. He was in and out of jail, and somebody in jail was kind to him who was a Muslim and introduced him to these things and these rules and this other stuff. And he was very receptive. This is the other thing. I think it just made me realize my own politics, everybody's politics, are just so influenced by your concept of if the world is a safe place, if you can trust authority, if the guy in first place is someone that is a kind person or as someone who is misusing their power, sure. Like all of these sorts of things. Or if you're
told, I think a big thing is if you're told you can get to first place or not. Even if you think they're abusing their power or not, the system, if you think you are someone who can excel within the system, you'll accept the system. And if you're someone who thinks that there's no chance the system puts you towards the top, you're going to want to buck the system.
And the system, I guess what I'm just saying is the system, it's the family system, is the first sort of decisions that are made about that. And then I think people's politics just evolve as like offshoots of how you feel about authority. Yeah. And then that forms the basis of whether you're likely, 9/11 is an inside job. Some people have a gut reaction to that. That's like, yes. Like, and the evidence is extremely convincing. And some people don't even entertain that thought. There's no way that's possible.
I am not saying that any of these are true or false or this or that, but we met a guy who believed almost every conspiracy, every single conspiracy that came to him, right? God. It was, HIV was created by the government and it only targets certain people and he's immune to it because of some, it's not designed for him. Yeah. The earth is flat. The 9/11 was an inside job. Just every conspiracy you can imagine. And we're like, what is going on? This guy seems, when you're not talking about conspiracies, like a friendly, charismatic, normal guy. Yeah. And he answers the door with a machine gun and a pistol at his head.
Yeah, he shows you he's cleaning up his guns because he's going to protect him and his own when the tanks roll in.
You find out that he had a very, very bad relationship with his father at a young age and completely distrusts authority because of it. Yeah. Like if it's the paternal figure, government, scientists, anyone that represents that thing he felt towards his dad when he was growing up, instantly he goes, they are evil, they're going to abuse me, they're going to abuse their power because his dad took advantage of the size age advantage that he had over his son and abused him. And you just go, oh, this all clicks into place. It makes sense to you given this belief that you've had since a very young age. Mm-hmm. So you don't need the evidence to be compelling in a way versus someone who maybe doesn't believe any conspiracies except for one, maybe actually was convinced by the evidence.
Yeah.
But when you're just, oh, they're all true. Yeah, it's I think signifies what life was like for you growing up.
Yep. 100%. And he also says that like what gets people into these movements is not, he's like, this Coleman was asking him, he's like, could it have been a far right movement? And he's like, well, I was he had the authority thing was something that he wasn't into. So he's like, I don't know, it could have been far right, but it could have been a lot of different things. And he said, what got me in and what gets people in is the community. It's the same. It's crazy how a lot of the things that are coming from different fields. I remember there was this TED Talk, perhaps a bit overstated, about addiction that talks about how the mice, when treated with or offered water full of drugs, will get addicted to the drugs and will drink themselves to death in a cage without other stimulation. But when reintroduced to a cage with other female mice and other friend mice and things to do, will kick the addiction. The idea that this community piece keeps coming up and like why people do crazy things, why they're addicted to drugs, why they're, want to blow up some building or I just keep seeing it come up that there is this need that will be filled for community.
Well, when I was making the Tom Hardy video, he does a nonprofit. He works at a nonprofit that helps drug addicts because he was a drug addict, and he's talking to someone who works there who was also a drug addict, and they're talking, and the guy explicitly says, I was starting out with no close connections, and the people that would build close connections with me did these drugs and asked me to do these drugs, and I thought if I didn't do them, I would lose my only close connections. And he initially had no interest in the effect of the drugs, and then became addicted to, I think it was heroin. And at that point, it's just game over, because now you need a drastic life change to get out of that. You know what I mean? If you keep the same friends and you keep the same house, it's not going to change for you. I know a guy who runs an Ibogaine clinic, and so people will come down who are heroin addicts. They'll do three weeks in the program, completely kick their physical addiction. He says if they don't move afterwards, they go back to the same house in the same neighborhood with the same friends, they'll just do heroin again, despite the fact they have no physical compulsion, because the same things that got them in the first time just get them in the second time.
Yeah.
But if they come home and they move and they're forced to make new friends and they have new associations with a new house and a new neighborhood, then they're done, because the Ibogaine cuts the physical addiction. And so, yeah, it's just really interesting to think about. A lot of times these people might not even necessarily just be chasing the high, but it's just the circumstances make them feel like this is what they do to fit in or have friends or have loved ones or whatever it might be.
Yeah. It seems like there's also this weird valley that one falls into in terms of the community. It's like once you're a drug addict, let's say you hit rock bottom, you no longer be a drug addict, so you're ready to get rid of all your drug addict friends. Like, okay, who's signing up to be your friend that's not a drug addict right now? Okay, you're just in Al-Qaeda. You realize that you don't want to do this anymore. Like, who's signing up to be that guy's friend and community? Is that once you get pulled into these things that are so far afield of mainstream community, it's tough to get back into mainstream community.
And I also think that, I don't know that drug addict communities do this, although maybe they do. But I think with things like Al-Qaeda or certain religious groups, they twist that knife. They say, if you leave, we're completely banning you from all of the people.
Oh, no,
you don't get to stay in touch.
Yeah.
Like, if you leave, you're dead to everyone here. And they make that explicitly clear, and they twist that knife purposely to keep people in who are dissatisfied with the ideology.
And this isn't everyone, but we know several. This is more than one Mormon person that I know has told me that was their experience, up to and including with family members when they left the church, which is, you are just gone.
Well, one guy, this is what I was going to say.
That's not to say every single one, but
one guy left fundamentalist. He's always very clear to say fundamentalist Mormons, like the most hardcore you can get. He left with his wife. His wife and him both don't agree with the religious views of it. But once they separated, his wife wanted the ties so much that she went back and just fakes it. And just, if she has a kid, she will tell that kid everything.
We spoke to him and we asked him, I believe, and I said, do you think she's faking it? He said, I think basically her reasoning is incredibly motivated. So that we've talked about this. Your brain is going to do you the favors that you feel that you need to survive and be safe. And like, if you need to believe something that you didn't believe 6 months ago and you had really good reasons for it, your brain is it'll do you that solid.
She'll raise a kid with her new husband and raise that kid completely in the faith and never even mention that she left. That'll be a life experience that the kid never hears about. So she's even if she in her head has doubts, to the outward facing world, including the people closest to her and the kids she's going to raise, she's as devout as they come, because to stray from that is to lose all her family and friends.
Yeah. No, it is. I forget when it came up sometime this week. I was just thinking of the things, okay. So we've talked in the past on this podcast about the things that my family, I've talked a lot about my family. You've mentioned, I don't know if you've mentioned on the podcast, but I've been like, my mom screwed this up or my dad screwed this up. And it's like, I can trace the screw ups through to like, and it affected me in this way. And somebody, I think in Patreon, I saw like, what do you think your parents did well? Cause you guys are well raised. And it's a way harder tracing. I was like, I don't actually know what the things they got right. I was trying to codify them. But one that I think I came up with related to this is that I did have a pretty strong, though not infinite, sense that I could date whoever I wanted and they would still love me. I could move wherever I wanted and they could still love me. I could go to college or not go to college and they would still love me. Like the span of things that I could do and still have the support and love of my family was pretty wide spanning.
Yeah. They didn't like it, but I could leave a private equity job, move to Brazil and start a business that was probably not going to work. And they would still love me. They would say, hey, I don't think this is a good call for you when you're going to be poor and struggling, but we will still love you. Yeah. And I actually know people who their parents have made it implicit, although not explicit, that if they move too far locationally, there will be a love penalty.
And not a love, it's often not framed as a love penalty. It's like a, you'll hurt me so much penalty. Like,
Right.
you don't love me if you go there. So that's, I guess, the things that have been, it's almost like very general, like the things that weren't good were almost the limits of the love. And some of it was just felt on my end as a boy growing up in the 90s, which is like, if you cry too much, you know what I mean? You're not worthy. And as demonstrated also by our fathers who never cried or expressed any weakness.
I have seen one tear leave my father's eyes, and it was when his dad died, and I saw him tear up at my sister's wedding, but he vehemently denies that a tear left his eyes.
Yes, and so without saying it, you get the impression like, that's not what we do. Like, so.
Oh no, he's super clear. He's super clear that that's not what men do.
Yeah, so the things that were limits or
other men can't.
Yeah.
Not all men.
Yeah, well, and again, he's never said that, but it's interpreted.
That's just my sense of what he thinks. Maybe he doesn't feel that way. That is my sense of how
he doesn't think that. No, but I think that kids are having done a bunch of MDMA, far more intuitive than we realize. Like, they pick up.
Well, they often say kids care much more about what you do than what you say.
Yeah.
So if you say,
"Oh, it's okay to cry.
Something's okay. Something's okay. Something's okay. Something's okay," but you never do it.
If it's okay to cry, but you're like this in sad situations, they know they're not.
Well, it's just interesting. You could see it shaking out the other way, but apparently children are much more receptive to what you do than if you're like, okay, you have to be kind to waiters, and then you're chewing out every waiter and bitching about them behind their back. Your kid is going to bitch out waiters, and you're going to go, I always said to be kind to waiters. I don't get it.
That's like,
you have road rage.
Yeah, don't swear.
No, they just look at your behavior. They almost don't. They just don't take your words at that much of import.
But yeah, so that, I guess the things that were done poorly were the limits of that, or the felt limits. In some cases, that's my fault, where I misinterpreted. Some cases, it was a reasonable interpretation. And the things that went well were like the expansiveness of the, I'll love you up to and including this and including this and including this and including this. And it gave a lot of freedom for, I don't know. I talked my parents out of religion when I was like 8. Or maybe I was 12 at that point, but I didn't get the sense that was going to jeopardize our relationship, which was good. Hope that you guys enjoyed that clip. If you want to see more like this and have us do more podcasts, we are 100% funded by our generous patrons. And if you'd like to contribute, there's a link in the description, and we'll have one pop up on the screen right here so that we can do more podcasts where we have fun conversations and hopefully some deep ones like this. Either way, hope that you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.